For decades, Singaporeans were taught a very simple formula for success. Study hard, get a stable job, buy a HDB flat, upgrade to a condo, build wealth, and eventually retire comfortably. That was a dream many people grew up believing in. And honestly, for a very long time, it actually worked. But recently, I've been noticing something very different. More Singaporeans are hesitating to upgrade. More couples are delaying property decisions. And strangely, even people earning decent incomes are starting to feel financially trapped. Not poor, not struggling, but stuck. And I think something deeper is quietly changing in Singapore. 5 years ago, a household earning $12,000 to $15,000 a month would probably feel fairly confident about upgrading from a HDB flat to a condo. Today, many of them are quietly giving up on the idea completely, not because they don't want a better lifestyle, not because they are lazy or irresponsible, but because the numbers no longer feel emotionally safe. And this is the part many people still don't fully realize. This is no longer just about property prices going up. It is about the psychology of the Singapore middle class, changing very quickly in ways that are making people feel increasingly anxious about their future. I think many Singaporeans today are experiencing something they rarely talk about openly, a quiet fear that maybe the property ladder no longer works the way it used to. Because in the past, upgrading felt almost natural. You buy your first flat, build some savings, then eventually move up into private property. It felt achievable, predictable even. But today, every property decision feels heavier, riskier, more emotionally exhausting. Buyers are no longer just asking whether they can afford the monthly installment. They are asking something much deeper. What if I buy at the wrong time? What if I become financially trapped for the next 20 years? And honestly, this fear is understandable. Condo prices have risen significantly over the last few years, but salaries have not increased at the same pace. So now, even selling their HDB flat, many upgraders still face enormous loans, rising costs, depleted savings, and massive long-term commitments. The emotional pressure becomes very different. Well, recently I spoke to a couple earning almost $15,000 combined every month. On paper, most people would probably consider them financially comfortable. But after calculating childcare expenses, renovation cost, aging parents, future education needs, rising rates, interest especially, and daily living expenses, it told me something that honestly stayed in my mind for quite some time. We don't feel rich anymore. And I think many Singaporeans secretly feel the same way today. Not broke, not struggling, but no longer secure. That emotional insecurity is becoming one of the biggest psychological shifts happening in Singapore's property market right now. The truth is, people don't upgrade to condos purely because of investment returns. Most property discussions online focus heavily on numbers, appreciation, and market timing. But emotionally, upgrading has always represented something much deeper in Singapore society. A condo symbolizes progress, stability, achievement, sometimes even personal success. For many couples, upgrading feels like proof that they are moving forward in life, that they are building a better future for themselves and their children, which is why property decisions in Singapore are often far more emotional than people realize. Because housing here is closely tied to identity, self-worth, and social expectations. Think about how often Singaporeans compare housing progress with friends, colleagues, relatives, or even classmates from years ago. Someone upgrades to an EC, another buys a private condominium. Someone else purchases an investment property. Slowly, without realizing it, many people begin measuring their own life progress through housing milestones. And that creates tremendous emotional pressure. especially for younger families. Because once upgrading becomes tied to identity instead of practicality, financial decisions become emotionally dangerous. Buyers start stretching budget, taking larger loans, and convincing themselves that future appreciation will justify today's stress. But when market confidence weakens, all those emotional assumptions suddenly become unstable. What I think is changing now is something much deeper than affordability alone. In the past, many Singaporeans believed the property ladder was almost predictable. Buy your first flat, upgrade later, hold long enough, and eventually your position improves over time. That confidence shaped how people planned the entire financial future. But today, that certainly feels weaker. More buyers are starting to question whether the old upgrading formula still works safely in the current market. I honestly think many Singaporeans today are quietly trapped in this cycle without realizing how much emotional stress it is creating over time. This emotional conflict creates enormous tension in the market. And honestly, I think that tension will continue growing over the next few years in Singapore. Another thing many people don't openly discuss is the emotional burden of debt. A large mortgage changes how people think, live, and behave psychologically. Suddenly, career risk feels scarier. Job insecurity feels more dangerous. Even everyday spending decisions become emotionally stressful. Some families begin delaying vacations, children, lifestyle upgrades, or retirement planning simply because so much income is tied into housing costs. And over time, that pressure quietly affects emotional well-being, which is why some higher income Singaporeans today appear financially successful on the outside, yet privately feel extremely anxious underneath. And honestly, I think this is becoming a middle-class identity crisis in Singapore, because many people follow the rules exactly as society taught them. Study hard, work hard, save consistently, upgrade progressively. Yet suddenly, even financially disciplined families are finding themselves questioning whether the next housing step is truly worth the emotional and financial sacrifice. That creates frustration, quite resentment, even shame sometimes. Because in Singapore, property ownership is often viewed as proof of life progress. So when upgrading becomes harder or feels increasingly risky, people naturally start questioning their own financial position and future security at a much deeper emotional level. This creates another major psychological contradiction. People fear overpaying, but they also fear missing out completely. They worry prices may continue rising beyond reach, and this fear of permanent exclusion is extremely powerful emotionally, because once buyers believe they may never catch up again, urgency starts influencing decisions. That is why even fearful buyers sometimes still enter the market aggressively, not necessarily because they feel confident, but because they are afraid future affordability could become even worse than today's already difficult conditions. And honestly, that can become very dangerous during uncertain market cycles. I think this is why topics like lease decay, aging condos, affordability pressure, and market timing suddenly feel so emotionally intense online today. Because underneath all the technical discussions, people are really talking about fear. Fear about losing retirement security, fear of making irreversible mistakes, fear of falling behind financially, and increasingly, these fears are no longer limited to lower-income households. Even financially stable Singaporeans are starting to feel uncertain about long-term housing decisions. The optimism that once drove upgrading decisions so confidently is becoming much weaker. And when confidence weakens across the middle class, market behavior can change surprisingly fast. Now, to be fair, this does not mean upgrading is automatically a mistake or that condos are bad investments. There will still be families who genuinely benefit from the lifestyle, convenience, privacy and long-term value that private properties can provide. And for some buyers, upgrading may still make complete financial sense depending on their income, stability, life stage, and long-term goals. But I think what has changed is that buyers today need far more self-awareness before making major housing decisions. Because many of the biggest risks now are no longer purely financial. They are behavioral, emotional urgency, social comparison, fear of missing out, and overconfidence can quietly distort decision-making in dangerous ways during uncertain market cycles. Many Singaporeans become psychologically conditioned to expect strong appreciation, resilient demand, and steadily rising valuations almost all the time. But markets do not move upwards forever in straight lines. And if confidence weakens meaningfully, even temporarily, buyers' behavior can shift very quickly. Suddenly, liquidity matters more. Monthly cash flow matters more. Flexibility matters more. Buyers become less focused on aspiration and more focused on resilience. And honestly, I think Singapore may slowly be entering a phase where financial caution starts becoming more socially respected than aggressive upgrading. Buyers are more skeptical now. They are more cautious about blindly accepting optimistic projections without acknowledging downside risks or affordability concerns. In fact, many viewers today actively search for content discussing hidden problems, financial stress, or market uncertainty because those conversations feel more realistic to their lived experiences. Markets are driven not just by affordability, but by how people emotionally interpret affordability over time. Another hidden emotional issue in Singapore property today is retirement fear. Many homeowners, property is not just housing. It is deeply tied to long-term financial security and retirement planning, which means many owners constantly think about questions like, will this property still hold value 20 years from now? Will future buyers still want it? Will this asset remain relevant when I eventually need to monetize or downgrade? And once uncertainty enters those questions, emotional anxiety rises very quickly, especially for older Singaporeans who may not have enough time to fully recover from major financial mistakes. That is why topics like lease decay or aging projects trigger such strong reactions online. Because for many people, these conversations feel intensely personal, not theoretical. At the same time, younger Singaporeans are entering the market with a very different mindset compared to previous generations. Many grew up watching their parents benefit from rising property values and relatively achievable upgrading pathways. But today, younger buyers face much higher prices, smaller unit sizes, larger financial commitments, and a far more competitive environment overall. As a result, many are becoming increasingly cautious about tying their entire future too heavily to housing. In fact, some younger Singaporeans are starting to prioritize flexibility, work-life balance, and lower financial stress over aggressively chasing traditional upgrading milestones. And honestly, I think this may become one of the biggest long-term cultural shifts happening in Singapore housing over the next decade. So where does all this eventually lead Singapore's property market moving forward? Personally, I think the market may slowly begin splitting into two very different psychological groups. One group will continue prioritizing aspirations, upgrading, and long-term asset growth. But another growing group may increasingly prioritize flexibility, lower stress, liquidity, and emotional sustainability instead. And when market psychology changes at scale, the market itself eventually changes too. This is why I personally feel buyers today need to stop treating property decisions purely as status milestone. Instead, housing decisions should increasingly be viewed through the lens of emotional sustainability. Can this property still feel emotionally manageable during uncertain times? Can you comfortably survive future stress without sacrificing peace of mind? Can your finances remain flexible if market conditions change unexpectedly? These questions matter enormously now because future may become psychological more volatile than many people expect. And honestly, emotional resilience may become one of the most important financial advantages Singapore homeowners can have moving forward in the coming years. And perhaps this is the biggest reason many Singaporeans are slowly starting to realize wealth is not only about asset appreciation anymore. Increasingly, people are beginning to value stability, flexibility, lower stress, and emotional security too. Because there comes a point where constantly chasing larger property gains may no longer improve happiness or peace of mind significantly. In fact, for some households, it may actually reduce emotional well-being instead. And I think more buyers are quietly beginning to ask themselves whether upgrading is truly improving their quality of life or simply increasing long-term financial pressure in ways that are emotionally exhausting over time. Personally, I do not think the Singapore property dream is completely dead, but I do think the psychology surrounding it has changed permanently. Buyers today are more cautious, more analytical, more emotionally aware, more fearful than previous generations. And honestly, that matters more than many people realize. Eventually, these emotional shifts can become powerful forces shaping the future direction of the market itself over time. So maybe the real question Singaporeans should ask today is no longer simply whether upgrading is financially possible. Maybe the deeper question is this. Before upgrading, ask yourself 3 questions. Can I comfortably handle this mortgage if interest rates rise? Am I upgrading for my family's needs or to keep up with others? Will this decision increase my peace of mind or reduce it? The best decision isn't always the one that maximizes return. Sometimes it's the one that let you sleep well last night. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Do let me know in the comments below. I definitely be reading every single one.